Welcome into episode 34 of the Josh Hendrickson Show. I'm Neal McCready, joined as always by Josh Hendrickson, Chair of Economics at the University of Mississippi. We're recording this on Thursday, January the 9th, some 12 to 14 hours before the beginning of what may or may not be Snowpocalypse 2025. We don't know. I don't get as upset, Josh, at weather people when they get it wrong. It's hard. You're predicting weather, and the weather can move. Things can change. But I'm always struck if the weather people get it completely wrong, everyone loses their mind. If you get a prediction on a college football game wrong, you never hear the end of it, right? The weather people, it's like, oh, it's okay. Hey, something happened. It was different. Football game doesn't go the right way. You said, I'm always amused by that. How are you?
Pretty good. My dad's favorite story to tell about me when I was a little kid is apparently when I was very young, somebody asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up, and I apparently said, I want to be a weatherman because it doesn't matter if you're correct. I don't remember this at all. I had to be really young, but that's his favorite story. That's his favorite story.
I can see a young Josh Hendrickson saying that. It's very pragmatic. All right. Happy New Year. Good to be back with you. It's been a minute since we've been going. So I'll start here. Get right to it. Donald Trump, at some point today, I assume it was after the state funeral for Jimmy Carter, Donald Trump said that Gavin Newsom should resign as the governor of California, that this is all his fault. Do you agree? On both or either of those counts?
I mean, I think that when you look at what's going on in California, this is just a prime example of the culmination of choosing people based on criteria other than competence. So there are things that you need to work in society, right? Like you need your electrical grid to run. You need your fire hydrants to have water, right? Like you just need certain things to work. And the problem is that like a lot of us kind of take this for granted because there are people who go to work every day and they make sure that these things work. And the problem that we have in California is that, well, and it's not just California, it's all over the place. But a key problem in California is that you just have all of these people who actually don't know how things work. And so the problem is, and the problem is that these same people are the people who are growing the government. And so as the government does more and more things, it becomes responsible for more and more things, which means that you need more and more practical knowledge of people within the government. But at the same time that they're sort of expanding the government, they're also selecting on criteria that has nothing to do with competence. And when you select people, without choosing people based on like leadership skills and competence, this is what you get. Like this, California for years has had terrible forest management. And you don't have to be an expert on forest management. You just listen to anybody talk about the problems that California faces. And they've been talking about this for years, that they need to clean out the brush in the forests, that they need to have controlled burns, that they need to do all of these things. You've taught, people have been saying for years that, they need to be storing more water in LA for exactly this type of thing. And the California voters have in fact, voted to do these things.
Yes. And dedicated taxpayer resources to do some of these things.
Right. And the problem is the stuff doesn't get carried out. And the stuff doesn't get carried out because you don't have competent people with practical knowledge who are capable of doing these things in positions of power. And so what we're seeing is the inevitable result of incompetence. Like the more and more, because what I don't think that the thing I try to emphasize to people, right, is that lots of times things just work, right? They work because every day somebody's going to their job and they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. And then that keeps whatever it is that they do, that keeps that running. And as long as you have these people who just show up every day and just do what they're supposed to do, things work. And then we begin to take those things for granted. And then even when you put people in positions of power or authority over the people who are working in those jobs, you really don't notice a lot of times that the person who's running the place is incompetent because everybody below them knows their job and they show up and they do it and things get done. The way that you find out how incompetent people are is when something goes wrong. Because when something goes wrong, it's not business as usual. And then people look to leadership. What do we do? How do we solve this problem? And if you don't have competent people with practical knowledge in positions of power, they don't know what to do, or they make very bad choices. And what's happening in Los Angeles is an absolute tragedy. Like Southern California is sort of like Southern California is just quintessentially American, right? Like there might be no area in the United States that when you just see it, you're like, that's America, right? Like Southern California is just, and it's everything about Southern California, right? It's the beautiful weather. It's the unique, like iconic, like architecture that they have. You know, it's also like the reputation that California has for being sort of a land of opportunity, whether you're talking about Hollywood or whether you're talking about like the gold rush, right? It's always been that place where people go seeking opportunity. And so it's like this uniquely American thing. And now what we're watching is we're watching the destruction of this uniquely American thing. There are all these iconic buildings, houses, schools, etc., that are gone. They're just gone. And they're gone because of incompetence. And people have to understand that this is the result of incompetence. I mean, I saw people yesterday on Twitter posting like, well, you know, the people who built these houses, you know, they built it at a time when, you know, the environment was different and now we've got climate change and all this stuff.
Oh, stop.
And here's the thing. This is incompetence. You know, I tweeted this out actually yesterday, is that when our ancestors blamed the gods for things, they at least had the creativity to name them, right? Like this idea that this is some sort of sacrifice to Mother Earth or something for our bad behavior. Like that stuff has to stop. Like this is like this weird, perverse religion that people have. And it needs to stop. This is the result. What has happened is the result of incompetence. It's the result of putting people in positions of power who have no business being in positions of power. They don't have any skills. They don't have any, they don't have any knowledge, like practical knowledge, and they're put in these positions and then they don't know what to do. I mean, they interviewed Gavin Newsom, like literally there's burning buildings behind him and they interviewed him and they're like, you know, what are you going to do? And he's like, you know, well, people are going to have to figure this out. No, not people. Like, not but you.
You're the governor of California.
Like, why were you not prepared? What are you doing to help people, you know, as you know, their entire lives, you know, burn in front of their eyes?
Your tweet is basic leadership skills and competence are always the selection mechanism. The laws of nature, economics, and human nature have a way of revealing themselves. It would be better to consider that at the ballot box than to be forced to realize it when tragedy strikes. I also laughed at your David Muir tweet, which we will touch on momentarily, because I despise David Muir, and yesterday was one of the reasons why.
It's very serious.
Because everyone's watching the news right now to see how you look in one of those fire coats, David.
That's what they care about. That's what people want.
The people want to make sure that you've not put a pound or two on while they watch people's lives burn down literally behind you. I'm David Muir. I have a clothespin on the back of my jacket to make it appear that I'm svelte.
He did the Homer Simpson thing. Like there's an episode of The Simpsons where Homer looks skinny, and then the joke is that he's taken all of the like skin and fat and he's just put it behind him and it's like clipped together. Like that's what David Muir did with his jacket.
And he stands there in his underwear in front of Marge. The Simpsons, man, they nail some stuff.
They do.
Mean, it's incredible.
They do.
All right, so should he resign? Should Gavin Newsom resign? Should the people of California demand that Gavin Newsom resign? I mean, this is failure. Or will the people of California continue to do this thing that the people of California, not all of the people, but the majority of the people have been doing for a while now, which is let's play theater. Let's pretend this didn't happen, or let's pretend this happened because of climate change or because of these things that have happened, not because you have a governor who was tasked to prepare for these things that people knew was coming, things that people talked about was coming. And instead of having a department in Los Angeles, the mayor of Los Angeles, the people of Los Angeles County, instead of focusing on, hey, having people who know how to handle situations and who know how to prepare for situations and to avoid situations, instead, we're focusing on, hey, do we have enough Hispanics? Do we have enough Asians? Do we have enough whites? Do we have enough gays? Do we have whatever? I mean, can you imagine putting a basketball team together like that? Okay, well, here's what we're going to do, guys. All right. We're going to start with this white guy, okay? He's going to be the forward. All right, now, we need an African-American, okay? All right. We need a Hispanic. We have a large Asian population here. Are any of you gay? Are any of you trans? Okay, we need a trans. All right, let's go play the Lakers. You'd get, can you imagine? Of course not. What do you do in basketball? Let's find the 12 best players. Let's get some people who can play guard. Let's get some people who can rebound. Let's get some people who can defend. Let's get some guys who can really fill it up from the outside and shoot. Hey, boss, they're all black. I don't care. We just want to win. Hey, boss, we only have 2 white guys on this team. So, can they shoot? Right? That's a meritocracy. Nobody thinks about that. Why is it that we shouldn't run government that way? We should have had someone who was like, hey, this brush is a problem. We need to clear it. We need to have controlled burns. There were people weeks ago that were saying this was a problem. This was going to happen. Hell, Donald Trump said this was going to happen. It happened. So how do you prevent it from happening again? This happened in Hawaii, and people, it led to nothing but conspiracy theories. It's already starting in LA where people are like, was this intentional? Was this arson? Whatever the case may be, the question remains. This should be disqualifying. I'll finish my long-winded thought on this, right? Alabama lost at Oklahoma, and we said that should be disqualifying. That's not what a playoff team does. Ole Miss lost to Kentucky. We said that should probably be disqualifying. Championship teams don't lose at home to Kentucky. This should be disqualifying. Competent governors don't let something like this happen when multiple people were predicting that it was going to happen.
Somebody asked me like how I would describe my politics. And I said, I'm basically against the people who just fundamentally want to deny nature. And what I mean by that is like, if you look around, we just have all of these people who just want to deny that the world is the way that it is. Right? Like,
yeah.
we don't have to prepare for these forest fires. Like, we don't have to prepare for them. Like, and when they happen, we just blame them on climate change. Like, oh, it's just, it can't be something that we did. It can't be like mistakes that we made. But the other thing is like, you see this just in every single part of society, is that they just deny the way that things are. Like, I mean, the Los Angeles Fire Department, they're the top 4 ranking people in the Los Angeles Fire Department are lesbians. What are the odds? What are the odds? I mean, like, if you had a meritocracy, what are the odds? Like, we're talking about firefighters. When you think about firefighters, the stereotype, first of all, is a man. Okay. Second of all, like, if you just have been alive, it's predominantly male. Okay. So what are the odds that they have that they have 4 women?
1 in something billion.
No, and then not only 4 women, but then 4 lesbians. Right? Like, this is, and then like and then you're not selecting people based on their qualifications for the job. I'm sorry, you're just not. Like, you're not. There's this denial of nature. Like, I'm sorry, but like, look, if I'm putting together a fire department,
mm-hmm.
I'm not saying there's not going to be any women in the fire department. There might be some women in the fire department. It's going to be mostly men.
Have you ever met a little girl when she was little that wanted to be a fire person?
Almost never. Yes.
Have you ever met little boys that wanted to be firemen?
Yes. And that's the thing, is that it's a denial of nature.
Yes.
Right? It's just a denial. Like, whether we're talking about a denial of physical reality, whether we're talking about a denial of human nature, Like every single thing. And in fact, pretty much everything that we're going to talk about today involves some form of denial about human nature, about physical reality, about economic constraints. It's all the same thing. It's just a denial that we actually have to deal with these things. I mean, even when you look at these fires, one of the biggest tragedies of this is that there are tons of insurance companies that pulled out of this market. And they didn't pull out of this market like because they're like these mean, evil corporations. They pulled out of this market because they said they were going to raise people's rates, because they said, look, our people are telling us that there is a higher likelihood that there's going to be a significant fire, right? And so we need to raise your rates, because if it's more likely that your house is going to catch on fire, it's more likely we're going to have to pay you out, which means you're going to have to pay us a higher premium. And the state of California came along and said, no, you can't raise these people's premiums. That's a denial of economic constraints. It's a denial of reality. You can't just pretend that this is all just, oh, we don't have to pay those higher prices. No, you don't have to pay those higher prices, but then people don't have insurance, or then people have to go to the state to get insurance. And they have to buy the really expensive state insurance. And, how long do you think it's going to take for people to rebuild who had that state insurance? Like, how long do you think it's going to take them? I mean,
they won't.
No, this is...
And this is going to end up, you watch, there's going to be some federal bailout, which means that the other states pay for this. So all of our rates are going to go up over something that was preventable. It's like one of the people in the Jay Robertson says, the climate cult, his words, not mine, but although I don't disagree, values, quote, the environment, whatever that means, over the well-being of actual human beings. They took a pragmatic thing and made it political. There are going to be winds off the Pacific. You know that. If you've ever been to California, there's winds. It gets cold at night, warm in the day. There's a lot of wind. If you go stand on the beach, if you've ever made the drive, probably wouldn't be a great day to do it today, but if you've ever made the drive up or down the Pacific Coast Highway 1, you know that there's lots of stops. Beautiful views, like you said. It's gorgeous. It's profound. I'm told it looks like parts of Italy, right? It's just gorgeous. And you stop and you get out. And if you do, the one thing you can pretty much always count on is it's going to be really windy. So you know that area is conducive to fast spreading fires. That's just one of the core things that you work with when you start in. Hey, this is a beautiful area, but it's conducive to fast spreading fires. We need to be vigilant, prepared. Someone else in the stream says, fires happen, but mitigation can make the impact much less. Bingo.
Exactly. I mean, that's the thing is that, well, somebody actually put up a really great side-by-side map this morning, because there were all these people in the media who were trying to say, well, this is just because we're building in places where we shouldn't be building, right? Because it's always like, because that's always it, right? Like, we're always disrupting nature, right? Like, that's always the narrative.
Yeah.
But the thing is so then somebody put up like, okay, here's fires in here are like wildfires in California, like from like 1860 to like 1900. And then here they are in like the last like 40 years. And it's almost precisely the same. And they're like, okay, so in 1860, Los Angeles didn't look like it does now, but the pattern of fires looks exactly like so this is a fact of reality, which makes it even worse, right? Because if it's something that you don't know is coming, then you can't prepare for it. But the thing is like, we know that these happen, we know what happens, and they're not taking the steps to actually like prevent them. They're not taking the steps to actually, mitigate the losses that people experience. And it's hard to attribute that to anything other than incompetence, because you know that it's coming. You can bring in, like, even if you yourself, like, this is why I said it's not just competence, right? Like, it's also just basic leadership skills. Like, part of being a leader is like, if you're a leader and you don't know something, you bring in somebody who does know.
Yes.
Or you bring in a variety of people who know, and you get their opinions on things. You say, like, okay, we have this problem. What should we do? And you listen to all the opinions, and then you make a decision because you go, okay, I listen to this guy, listen to this guy, listen to this guy. I think based on all of these conversations, I think that we should do whatever, right? And that's how basic leadership works.
Yeah. So if you make me a basketball coach today because you're like, listen, Neal, we just think you'd be a great motivator. We love the way you communicate. We think you'd be a great recruiter. You're taking this job. Okay, well, I don't know how to install defense. So I'm going to go find somebody to work for me who can install defense. And I'm going to let that person install defense. And then I'm going to hire a shooting coach. Work with shooting because I don't know the fundamentals of shooting, right? You're hiring me for this. I'm incompetent as that. I'm going to hire competency under me. And yeah, are those people going to be like, hey, I can't believe we're working for this idiot? Sure, of course. But if I do a good enough job in what I'm supposed to do and delegate and pay them well enough, we might get away with it for a while. I know that's not a perfect example, but you know what I mean. These people are getting hired and they're just hiring more people. It'd be like me hiring more of my sports writing buddies to coach the basketball team. It ain't going to work. It's going to get exposed. As soon as we play a game against a competent team and get our asses beat, this is going to be obvious. And that's what's happened here.
Well, and this is the other problem is that there's no account. Like part of the issue is there's no accountability. I don't know if I sent this to you or not, but there was a clip from the local news in LA, and it was just the absolute perfect clip because it encapsulates like everything we always talk about the media. So they brought on this guy who ran for mayor last time around, I think 2022, and they brought him on. He was on the phone, and they were talking to him, and he was talking about how this is basic incompetence. And he said, like we have bad forest management, and then he said, we have such a water problem and we shouldn't have a water problem. He was like, the fire hydrants are dry. And so after he says this, they cut back to the anchor and the anchor's like, although he said that the fire hydrants are dry, we have not been told that, nor do we have evidence that the fire hydrants are dry. And he's like, let's cut to so-and-so out in the field. And they go to this woman. And literally the woman on location, the very second they cut to her, she's like, hey, yeah, it's really tough out here. As you can see, there's fires burning behind me. I've talked to several firefighters who are talking about how the fire hydrants are dry in this area. All of them are dry again. And it was just a classic because
it's crazy.
They had to correct this guy. And the reason that they had to correct him is because he could have been the mayor. He could have been the mayor. If they would have just voted for this guy, he would have been the mayor. But they didn't. They voted for the lady whose career was basically being like a community organizer and communist activist who's taken like 8 trips to Cuba in her lifetime. Because, who among us hasn't gone to the communist, island of Cuba 8 times? Okay. Like,
hey.
I mean, this is... But
have you had a Cuban cigar? Fantastic.
But it's just, it is.
Have you been to the Juan Marshall Museum?
It's preposterous. But they have to correct him because they have to undermine him because this is the guy who could have been in charge, right?
Lee Harvey Oswald went to Cuba.
But they just, she was responsible for more deaths, arguably, than Lee Harvey Oswald. But I mean, it's absolutely preposterous. But it also signifies like exactly what the media. This is what the media does. This is actually a trick. This is my new media thing. Whenever the media tells you we don't have any evidence of this, that's their favorite thing. Whenever they say we don't have any evidence of this, what you should hear is we don't want you to hear that. That's what you should actually hear because that's become their new code. When they don't want you to hear something, they say, well, we have no evidence of that. Because again, saying you have no evidence is not saying that it's not happening, right? You're just saying you don't have evidence of it. So later on, when you have to correct yourself, you could always say, new evidence has come to light.
You're so negative. It's really starting to bother me. Listen, if you want to criticize the state of California and the people of Los Angeles, the fire department for not being able to handle a brush fire that turned into destruction of most of Southern California, that's one thing. They sent a fire truck to Ukraine. They did. I'm looking right at it. Yeah. I'm looking right at it. They sent a fire truck to Ukraine. It's a Type 3 fire engine. It's going to help Ukrainian firefighters.
This is what I like. I got a lot of crap for this when I said this. I got crap from a couple of people when I said this because I said this on I don't know, maybe not the last show, maybe it was the one before that. But I said, like, here's my idea. Like, we do America, but for Americans, right? Like, and
I mean, it's a thought.
It's just like, what are we doing?
It's worth considering.
What are we doing? We are sending fire trucks to Ukraine. It's not just fire trucks, by the way. There's also a bunch of fire equipment. They also sent a bunch of equipment over there, right? And it's just like,
well, we can't have a fire in Kiev.
It's like you're in Los Angeles, okay? You're in Los Angeles. Nothing catches fire in Los Angeles. You never have.
So far today, you're more concerned with America than you are Cuba and Ukraine.
That's correct.
Wow.
It is just, well, and that's the other thing is that the Ukraine stuff has gotten so ridiculous that it's like, it's almost unbelievable when you hear these stories now, because it's like every single thing that happens is they're like, oh, there's these wildfires in California. And you're like, well, thank God they got a lot of fire trucks out there. And they're like, actually, we gave them to Ukraine. It's just, this is everything. It's everything.
All right. I want to switch to New Orleans. I told this story on another show, I think. I can't remember. It's been a weird few weeks. I was in Jacksonville on New Year's Eve. I was there to cover the Gator Bowl. And I don't know what it was. I couldn't really sleep in the hotel most nights. I'd sleep. It was fitful sleep. I'd wake up. I'd look at my phone, stuff like that, where you do that deal where you're like, okay, do I look at my phone because the phone might make me tired, or do I look at the phone? Do I risk looking at the phone where it might wake me up even more? And on this night, I was like, I'm already awake. If I wake up more, I'm just going to be more awake. So it's January the 1st. It's about 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning. And I look at my phone. I think it's close to 5 o'clock in the morning there. Yeah, it was because I was thinking, I guess you could get up and go exercise, whatever. And I look at my phone, and there's the first few tweets from New Orleans. A car on Bourbon. And I thought, no way that's really right, because I've been to Bourbon and Canal many times, right? Covering the Sugar Bowl, taking Carson down to watch the Thunder play the Pelicans, Saints games, stuff. Grew up in Louisiana. We went to New Orleans some good bit. Covered the Saints when I was in Mobile. Been in New Orleans a lot. Been on that area a lot. There was a couple of restaurants on Bourbon that I like. I would walk off, Canal and turn on to Bourbon and go when I was there. And in my mind, I was like, I bet it's not that bad. I bet people have it kind of wrong, because the bollards will be up. You can't get a truck down Bourbon on New Year's Eve. That's what I thought. It was a rational thought. And then I heard, no, the bollards were down. They were being repaired for the Super Bowl. And I got irrationally angry. I spent New Year's Day irrationally angry at New Orleans, the people of New Orleans, the leadership of New Orleans. Because, Josh, you don't have to be all that competent when you're in your city planning meeting. I mean, you really could be completely incompetent and go, hey, it's going to be New Year's Eve on Tuesday night, Wednesday night, whatever. There's going to be a lot of people in the quarter partying. They're going to stay out late. The ball's going to drop at midnight thing. They're going to still be out. There's going to be a lot of them. They're not going to be completely aware, because a lot of them are going to be sort of intoxicated. We need a heavy police presence just to control the people. It's going to be a lot of young people. We need to be out there. Oh, and by the way, we don't need some drunk driver going through. So let's make sure that we have those roads completely blocked off, okay? I haven't been in crowd management a day in my life. And I would have been able to do that. I mean, if you told me some random Tuesday in June they were down because we were trying to repair them and somebody pulled this off, I'd be like, God, that sucks. But I mean, sometimes you got to repair things. But these would have been ready for New Year's Eve. The Super Bowl's in like 4 weeks. These would have been ready for New Year's Eve. And if they weren't, I would have said, then we have to have something else. Police cars lined up, something. These roads, Bourbon and Canal, and these side, they have in the quarter where all the people are on New Year's Eve, those roads are not open to traffic. That's why you have police on horses. And when I heard, no, the bollards were down. And they didn't have any barriers up. Had some cars, but they had no barriers up. I was, and still am. I'm furious. So a lot of young people, I don't even know what the final count is right now. 16, 17, right? 15, 16, 17, almost all young people. Kid at Alabama, kid at Auburn. I think the boy from Ole Miss is still alive. I think he's recovering. Totally unnecessary. You knew there were going to be young people out partying, like every New Year's Eve in New Orleans. And you didn't take basic preventative measures because you're effing incompetent. Beyond that, you're so you're so stupid and incompetent that I don't think we should have to breathe the same oxygen with you. I'm that angry about it. They roll out this 80-something-year-old police chief who, before this, was the police chief of Oakland, California. Not exactly the greatest reputation in the world for law enforcement.
And she got fired.
And so she gets hired in New Orleans. Why? Because she's female. Not because this is a person who's really, really good at law enforcement, very good at management, people management, planning, things of that nature. New Orleans has a lot of big events, boys and girls. Did you not know the Sugar Bowl was going to get played on New Year's Day? Because, Josh, it's been played on New Year's Day every year for like 80 damn years. You knew it was going to get played. You knew there was going to be a lot of people from two schools at a minimum there. And then in addition to that, it's New Orleans. People come to party in New Orleans. You have conventions in New Orleans. You have an NFL team in New Orleans, an NBA team in New Orleans. You got stuff in New Orleans. So you hire someone in New Orleans as the head of the police who also knows event planning, how to event security, pretty basic shit. It's infuriating.
There's a lot to unpack here. I think that, well, let's start with the incompetence. Like the idea that this was, the idea that this attack could even be perpetrated, like you said, is completely ridiculous. Like the idea that you could ever, that you could ever do something like this is just preposterous. Like you, because it's not like it's not a normal thing. It's not like people have tried to justify this by saying, well, it's a terrorist attack. You can't predict a terrorist attack. It's like, no. You didn't have to predict a terrorist attack. Like it could just be like a drunk driver. It could just be somebody who took a wrong turn. Mm-hmm. It could be somebody who's driving and they get a text and they're a little bit inebriated and they look down at their text and the next thing you know, they're running over people on the sidewalk. Yep. That's all that's all it takes. You didn't have to foresee a terrorist attack. Yeah. Not
to interrupt you. Like you couldn't, these are the things that I would think you would say in a meeting. Hey, if there's some nut who's willing to strap explosives to his body under his coat and walk into the middle of Bourbon and set it off and kill a bunch of people, that's a tragedy. And I don't know that we can prevent that. We have to be vigilant, be looking for those people, right? But you could prevent. I'm stopping. You could prevent this. This was preventable.
But then it was incompetence on every level. Like, I mean, even in the morning, like the mayor comes out and the mayor's like, yes, we're very saddened, by this terrorist attack. I've been on the phone with the White House and blah, blah, blah. And then somebody from the FBI comes up and goes, well, this is not a terrorist attack. We're not treating this as a terrorist attack. And it's like, the mayor just said it was a terrorist attack. Like, you can't get on the same page. Like, before you talk to the media, like, you can't even say, like, hey, this is what we're going to call this for now. We're still investigating, whatever. Okay. So first of all, the fact that the mayor said that means, like, I don't fault the mayor, because the fact that the mayor is not going to come out and say that unless she knows that that's actually what was going on,
Yes.
right? Like, you don't just say, oh, this was a terrorist attack and then walk that back later. No, she knew that. And the reason that she knew that, which we found out, was because there was an ISIS flag on the truck, which makes it a pretty obvious thing that, like, well, this is an act of terrorism.
It's a terrible,
right? And so, but for whatever reason, the FBI is like, no, we don't, this is not. So already we're off to a bad start, because you can't trust anything that these people say, because you've got one person saying it's a terrorist attack and you've got another person saying, well, we don't know that. We're not treating it as a terrorist attack. Well, which is it? Because it's pretty, like, it's not that hard to distinguish between a drunk person driving down Bourbon Street and then somebody deliberately driving down the street trying to kill people. Like, those are two very different things.
Mm-hmm.
So the idea that, like, you can't distinguish between this, especially when the guy had an ISIS flag on his truck. So you already have started off on a bad foot, because what do I believe? Because you're telling me two different things. And not only that, like, I can see with my own eyes. And the information that you don't think that I have now, I'm going to have in like 30 minutes. Okay. So, like, it's best to just come out and tell the truth. The other thing is, then they have this, like, police commissioner, police chief, whatever her title is. She comes out. This is like it's satire at this point. Like, this woman comes out, the hat is too big for her head. Like, the hat is too big for her head. Like, if in a million years I said, hey, did you know the police chief of New Orleans is a woman? And I asked you to just sketch the woman, right? Just draw a picture of her. You could have drawn a million pictures. You never would have drawn this woman. You never would have drawn this woman, because you've never seen somebody drown in their hat at the press conference. Like, you've never seen this. And then the other thing is that the more questions they asked this woman, it really made you wonder, like, does this woman even live in New Orleans? Like, does she know? Like, because she doesn't seem to know very much. Now, I get, like, I don't know how long she's been in the job, but here's the thing. This is what I'm talking about. She was a police chief in Oakland. Oakland, not exactly known for its police force, not exactly known for having police that, have positive interactions with the community. Okay. But not only was she the police chief there, she was fired as the police chief there, which means she did a bad job in Oakland. Okay. We're talking about, this is California. Okay. Mm-hmm. Where, like, theft is legal below $1,000, right? Like, as long as you just do, theft below $1,000, it's legal. A police chief there managed to be so bad at her job, where they have passed laws, like, reducing the demand for police. She has done such a bad job that she has been fired.
They once had a DA from there who, let's see, where'd she go? I think she became the vice president. She just got fired.
Speaking of people who got fired, so she
turned in her notice.
You have this person, and
got 11 days.
This person doesn't have. We should talk about that later too, because when Jill Biden sat next to her at the funeral this morning, like, I mean,
a funeral should not provide that level of entertainment, but my goodness,
yeah. And well, it's also good. It was also good to see, President Obama, just sort of laughing it up with the number one threat to democracy that we've ever faced. But anyway, so so this woman, like, she gets fired from her job. She somehow gets a job in New Orleans. She doesn't seem to know much about New Orleans. She's clearly not good at her job.
But you don't.
And, but this is the thing, though, is then this is the thing. As long as we continue to put people in positions that they are not qualified for, this is the kind of stuff that happens. I am of the radical opinion that I am of the radical opinion that you should be able to walk down a city street anywhere in the United States and not be killed. Like, that's my radical opinion. And
that's out there, but
when you look at when you look at this, all of these places that are failing, it's bad leadership. It's incompetent leadership. It's people who just deny fundamental characteristics about human nature. This woman should not be in that position.
No.
She should have been fired already. Okay, I get that, like, there's an investigation going on. I get that there's all these kinds of things. Like, no, like, they should have gotten rid of her, like, the day that she showed up in that hat. The day that she showed up and she had that giant hat on. Well, it's not a giant hat. It's a regular size hat. It just doesn't fit her head. It was the most embarrassing thing. Like, I just watched it thinking, this is the person? Like, this is the person who's in charge?
Had there not just been a tragedy, it would have been funny.
Yeah.
But the fact that there had just been a horrible tragedy made it the opposite of funny. It made it infuriating because, again, I don't care if it was your first damn day on the job. That was the most predictable thing. That was the one area of, hey, look, if we do nothing else tonight, let's secure the quarter, right? Had this happened off in someplace in Metairie or Slidell or something, I might have said, well, what do you do? I mean, you can't prevent everything.
But also, you're in charge.
But this was Bourbon. Not only was it the quarter, it was the one street on the quarter that would be the most populated. It's beyond infuriating.
Well, and
I mean, and
well, it's because you're in charge. Like, if you're in charge, like, this is not like there was a police officer, like, on his first day on the job who happens to make a mistake.
Right.
Like, that's not what this. Like, that's not what this was.
No.
This is the person who is in charge.
Yes.
Being so incompetent that they're just letting cars drive wildly down the street that is going to be filled with people.
Yes.
Like that. I mean, you don't have to be very smart to know. You don't like this. It's not like this takes a lot of intelligence.
No.
You just have to be the person who makes the decision, and you have to be the person who says, "Hey, it's not going to be safe to let cars down there." The end.
Well, and supposedly some of the officers in New Orleans absolutely did say that night. Officers that were on duty were on their radios saying, "Why is this not closed? What are all these cars doing here?" I mean, that job's hard enough, right? Bourbon Street, New Year's Eve, night before the Sugar Bowl, 2 a.m, lots of drunk kids. It's a hard job. A lot of those kids are going to be a lot of obnoxious drunk. And you're trying to keep the peace. Hey, our goal is to get these people eventually back to their hotels or whatnot. Let's get them in Ubers. Let's get them right. Let's just get everybody home. That's the goal. I know this for a fact. I've read about it. Their goal is not to fill up the jail with a bunch of drunk 19-year-olds. It's stupid. Let's get everybody through. Let them have fun. Go home. They'll pay for it in the morning. They'll be drunk. They'll be hungover. Ha ha. They were asking on the thing, why are these roads not closed off? So literally they had time during the night to go, hey, we need to close these roads off. Let's get them closed off. I mean, I've watched Oxford close roads for a double-decker run or whatever. It can be done on the fly. It's incompetence. But it's not only incompetence, it's not caring.
Well, and that's the other problem is that it's like, it's not just that we have people in positions of authority that are incompetent. It's like, it's not actually clear that they realize that they're not qualified for the job.
Yeah.
And that's the bigger problem.
Yeah.
Because if you are incompetent, but you're in a position and you're sort of like, hey, like, I don't know how I got here, you might actually end up being okay because you're going to seek out a lot of help. Right.
Yep.
But when you are in that position and you think you earned it and you are not at all qualified to be there, that's the worst of all possible worlds because now we're going to have you making very confident bad decisions.
Obviously that was followed by Vegas. I'm struggling with this Vegas thing. You can make the argument for Lone Nut. His life was falling apart. His wife had left him. There's a lot there. But 3 weeks before Donald Trump is inaugurated, you take a Tesla, Elon Musk, in front of a Trump hotel in Las Vegas and blow it up. if the symbology was accidental, I'm having a hard time with it. You know what I mean? There's a lot there, and then you do the thing about these two people, the one that was driving the truck in New Orleans and this guy were at the same unit, Fort Bragg. Maybe not same unit, but they were at Fort Bragg together. There's just a lot there. The Sean Ryan note, the email that's now been authenticated. There's just a lot there. And it's like, and here's where I get suspicious. I realize that we have really short attention spans and that a news cycle is really short these days. I mean, we are 6 months, almost 6 months removed from a attempt on Donald Trump's life that played out on national television. A bullet that literally hit his head. And that's no longer talked about. We know nothing about the person anymore. It's completely gone.
We know more about every single person that we're talking about right now.
Did we do that?
Every single person than that guy.
It's like it didn't happen. Yeah. I mean, it's wild. It's just gone. Might as well be John Wilkes Booth. I mean, it is gone. It is like, that's over. 6 months. They were still talking about the Kennedy assassination 6 months after. I mean, they were still, but not this. And maybe it's because it wasn't successful, thank God. But I don't know. Anyway, the New Orleans thing is kind of gone. We're not talking about that story anymore. Kind of disappeared. I suspect we'll stop talking about the fires here in a couple of days. That'll just go away. We don't talk about the Hawaii fires anymore. It's like it didn't happen. I anticipate that this story, the Vegas explosion in front of the Trump Tower, will just go away. And I'm suspicious when it just goes away. I'm more suspicious when it just goes away than I am when, no, these things stay in the news cycle for a while. When these things you see the media doing deep dives and really digging into what happened and why it happened and how it happened. I'll give sports media that. We obsess over like the kid at the Sugar Bowl who got the 15-yard penalty. We were still talking about him a week later, but we don't talk about the thing in Vegas. I'm suspicious of that.
Well, there's a lot here. I mean, even going back to New Orleans, like there was an AP story that came out on January 1st. It's still up. And it that was about the terrorist attack, and there's a paragraph in the story, and this is actually it was originally the headline. They might have changed the headline now, but the headline in the story and what this specific article was about is that they had video footage of 3 men and 1 female placing bombs near the cathedral, and then that story also just went away, and it's weird because I mean that's a very specific thing to have seen. Right. Yeah. Like you said, it's not like you said, oh, we have this video of people who may possibly have been placing explosives. It was like we have a video of 3 men and 1 woman placing explosives by the cathedral. And then that just disappeared.
And then he was acting alone.
Yeah. And
he was acting alone.
Yeah. Now it's, he acted alone. Uh-huh. He acted alone. There's nothing to see here. It's just him. And so, look, I'm not saying that they didn't get that wrong. I'm not saying that, hey, maybe they thought they saw something on video and it turned out later that it wasn't. But, the AP hasn't taken the story down, which is one of their favorite things to do now is where you just kind of take the story down and it just kind of disappears. And then we all forget that they wrote the story. But it's still up. And so that's bizarre. The Las Vegas thing just makes absolutely no sense whatsoever on so many different levels. Like the whole thing makes no sense. Okay, so this guy is an explosives expert, and then he drives the Cybertruck to the Trump Hotel, and then he sets off an explosion. But before he sets off the explosion, he also shoots himself in the head. And so, look, it's possible that he did this because he was trying to get attention. Okay, but like the explosion clearly was not to create damage. Like it was clearly not to create damage. It was clearly not to harm somebody because he's an explosive expert, and it was basically like fireworks and stuff.
Yeah, he put some Roman candles in there.
This is not so maybe it was just to maybe it was just to send up a signal, like maybe it was to call attention to something, whatever. But the point is like the other weird thing about it is that so he shot himself in the head and then the truck exploded. Like what? Like I don't understand. Like you're gonna blow up the truck.
Mm-hmm.
Like maybe you're concerned that you're just not gonna burn. Like you don't want to burn alive or something. I don't know. But like that the whole thing doesn't really make any sense. The other thing is that um it's possible that this guy just had like a complete mental breakdown. That he just had a complete mental breakdown and this is how he dealt with it. But there's just like lots of weird things like there are text messages from him to like old girlfriends talking about driving the Cybertruck. Like that just seems like really suspicious to me. Like you're just cruising around in the Cybertruck having a mental breakdown and then you're like stopping to text like old girlfriends that you're in the Cybertruck. Like I mean, look, maybe if you're not in your right mind, who knows what you do. But like this is just bizarre. And the other thing is that the body was burned beyond recognition, but they're fairly confident that they know who this guy is. Not just fairly confident, like they've announced who the guy is, right?
And papers in the car weren't burned.
Right.
What weren't? I'm asking.
It
What
was
burns
either
faster, a piece of paper or a human body?
Well, I think it's his passport, and in fairness, like the passport is designed to withstand damage, but like I don't know that it withstands an explosion. Um, the but the other thing about it is like okay, if he's burned beyond, not only was he burned beyond recognition, but also like they couldn't get dental records, and so it's like so.
So then, how they know who he was?
So we believe that this is him on the basis of this ID that you found. But like we can't really ID him from his remains. That just it strikes me as odd. Also, like, what was the objective? Because clearly, if you were somebody, even if you just lost your mind, you drove to the Trump Hotel in the Cybertruck and then you blew it up in front of it. Like it's very clear that like this is supposed to have some kind of like symbolic like meaning. But what is the symbolic meaning? Also, you could have blown up the truck without blowing up yourself. Like conceivably, if you
Sure.
if you're an expert, like you could have just blown up the truck and gotten
You could
away.
have put a remote device somewhere, right?
And so I mean, I see a variety of possibilities here. Like, I mean, one possibility is, look, he just had a mental breakdown, and this is just how he dealt with it. And like people have, psychic breaks, and this is just a psychic break, and like that's all there is to it. I mean, another possibility is that the guy that they claim did it is not actually dead. So it could be that this guy actually that's not his body in the car, and that the reason that the body has a gunshot wound is because he killed the guy or something. I don't know. It's also possible that that guy is the guy in the truck, and the reason that the authorities knew that it was him is that they're the ones who shot him, right? I mean, because I don't know. Like, I mean, and this is the thing is that this gets even weirder, right? Because we had this whole Sean Ryan thing, right? Where, there's this Sean Ryan guy, he's like former Navy SEALs, former like CIA, stuff like that. Like he has a guy on his podcast. It's like, hey, I got this email, and the thing is that the guy not only had this email, but the thing that was interesting to me is that guy, if you went back on his Twitter feed, he had actually posted a tweet that was clearly a reference to that email, because he was just making fun of like how ridiculous the email was. Like, oh, you won't believe some of the stuff that I get, and was like kind of like making fun of it. And then after this happened, then he like went and looked, and it was like, oh, this came from the guy that they're saying, did this. Well, okay, now that so he goes on the podcast, and then they talk about it, and the podcast doesn't actually clear up any of those sort of scenarios. Like, so number one, you could imagine that like if half of what he is saying in the email is accurate, right? There are people who would want to shut him up. In which case, it could be him, but maybe he didn't kill himself. Maybe maybe the reason he had a gunshot wound is because somebody else killed him to shut him up. And then
Because in the email, he says people are following him.
Yeah.
He doesn't think he can make it to the border. And
yeah. And so it could be possible that, whoever was following him actually killed him. And then this explosion was just a distraction so that nobody would question why this guy ended up dead.
Well, if he's in a Tesla, and if you want to make it look like it's something else, you go do it in front of a Trump thing. Elon helped Trump, and this is some symbology of the Trump, all that stuff, right? I mean, and you do it in such a way that there's no real collateral damage. So you make him even look like more of an incompetent nut who lost his bearings, and his wife left him, and all of those things. And
well, it's also possible that, maybe there was maybe he was being followed. Maybe there was a confrontation. Maybe he shot the other guy. And then maybe he put that guy in the car,
Sure.
made it look like it was him. And because then
we would know some of these things by now, right?
I mean, I'm not sure that we would know any of them. I mean, like this is the thing that's weird about it. The other thing I have to say too is then another layer that you have to talk about here is like, I've listened to Sean Ryan's podcast before. Like, I'm not like a loyal listener. I've listened to some things. The other thing, like, I'm not saying that this necessarily applies to Sean Ryan, but it could, is that another layer to this is that it's not clear to what extent that he's an honest broker in this situation either, right? Like, so he could be, like this information could have come out because somebody wants it to come out and they want, this pushed in some way. We don't know to what extent, we don't know to what extent like all of this is on the up and up, because here's the other thing that people have to start paying attention to. One of the things that people are going to have to start paying attention to is this: media credibility is gone. It's completely gone.
100%.
And not only is media credibility gone, but a lot of the media's credibility has been transferred to these people who are doing podcasts, right? Like, you think like people are attributing, characteristics of these podcasts of like Joe Rogan, maybe even Sean Ryan, right? Like people like that who have a big audience.
Yeah.
People are attributing some legitimacy to them. And so the other thing is that you've got to, like, this is going to happen. Like, it is going to happen is that somebody is going to try to give a fake story to somebody on like these podcasts to undermine their credibility.
I think it's already happened to Carlson.
Yeah.
Where he caught it.
Yeah. I mean, there are people who are pushing things where, so they're pushing things and they're going to be, and they will be provably false. But they're going to be pushed to the people who have these big outlets and who have these big podcasts and who have this influence and who have been attacking the media, because there are going to be people who want to shift who want to shift that credibility back to the traditional media. And so there's going to be stuff where people give fake stories to these big podcasters and they run with it, and then it's provably false. And then that undermines their credibility. And then look, some people stop listening, but then who's going to report it is like ABC News or somebody like that.
100%.
And so then people are going to say, oh, well, maybe ABC News isn't as bad as I thought it was, because, these other guys get things wrong too. And that sort of thing. And so we also have to be cognizant of that like there are also just false narratives that are going to be planted to try to undermine these people's credibility. And so I think that's the thing to me that makes that story fascinating, is that there's just layer upon layer upon layer of like, what in the world is going on here? But in terms of whether we're going to get any answers to those questions, I really doubt it. Like, I really doubt that we're going to get answers to these questions, because they're not, the answers to these questions. The other thing too is, like, I'm not saying that the email is fake, right? Like a bunch of people came out and said, oh, the email is fake. But like, the email can be real, but the stuff in the email could be, could be fabricated.
I do think everyone's established now that the email's real.
Yeah.
Now, he could be completely delusional in the things that are in the email. I don't know.
Well, and the thing that sort of raises red flags about the email is that the email seems to be, if you read it a couple of times, the email really seems to be like, hey, we did some really bad stuff in Afghanistan, right? Which again doesn't help you figure out what happened, because this could be a guy who just had a mental break. He saw things that he wishes he didn't see. He took part in things that he wished he didn't take part in, and now he can't live with himself, and so this is how he ends it. And it's possible that was his way of calling attention to stuff. The curious thing to me, and maybe it's just because it gets more people's attention, or maybe it's because it's more headline grabbing, is like the first part of the email is just like the first part of the email is just so unbelievable. It's just like, the United States has this anti-gravity technology, and the only other place that has it is China, and that's what all of these drones are, and all this kind of stuff. And it's like a little too on the nose for me, right? Like that, like you just happen to be on the run, you just happen to think somebody's following you, and you just happen to know about this thing that everybody's talking about in the news, and it's not, like that part was just too sensational for me.
Yeah.
And so the whole thing is just like this. It's just like a mystery wrapped in another mystery. Like there's so many layers to this where you're just like, I don't even really know what's going on. But then again, that's potentially another point. Is that another way that propagandists operate, right? Is they put out as much information as they possibly can, and so that you can't tell what's real and what's not. And it's just information overload. And so you can never figure out what's really going on because there's too many possibilities.
I mean, one of the things that I think people should do before they just go crazy with this is take a break, right? Take a few days, go down to the Gulf of America and just take in some sunshine, some fresh air, have some seafood. Be careful in the Gulf of America because there are lots of sharks. But enjoy the Gulf.
It has a great ring to it.
It does, the Gulf of America. And then, you could fly up to Trump land.
Yeah.
Used to be called Greenland, but now it's Trump land.
Yeah.
I don't know,
You could take a tour of the 51st state, Canada.
Well, I was going to say, like Winnipeg State. You think that'll be a Big Ten school? Or is that ACC? What power, what level do you put, Manitoba A&M?
I still look, I'm sticking to this. We really only want Alberta. That's really all we want. Alberta is very American. Like, I think they would fit in very well.
Yeah, we don't want.
They got a lot of oil.
We don't need Quebec.
A lot of, yeah. I mean, Quebec, look, maybe that would be our gift, is that, like we let Quebec go off on its own. Canada's never let them secede. We just say, hey, Quebec, you go do your thing. And go do your thing with your crazy French Canadian accent that somehow sounds so much different than actual French. And
you grew up not too far from Ontario.
Yeah.
What about Ontario? Are we adding them?
No, we don't want Ontario.
Just leave them alone.
No,
okay.
We don't want
just Alberta.
We really just want Alberta. That's it.
Not Saskatchewan and all that area.
I mean, you could probably convince me on Saskatchewan, but really it's just Alberta, but also maybe the northern part of British Columbia. We don't want Vancouver. That's a disaster. We do not want Vancouver.
We've already got Vancouver. It's called Seattle.
Yes. And so like maybe if we just had like the top, the top half of
what if we traded
British Columbia,
Seattle and Portland and sent it to Canada
for Alberta and then a province to be named later.
Yeah, a province to be named later in cash considerations.
Yes, that's right.
Maybe a future draft pick. All right. Trump was at the funeral today. He's got 11 days till he takes power. A little less than 11 from this very moment, the way it works. What are you expecting as we wrap up? What are you expecting from Trump in his first few weeks?
Well, kind of what I'm most interested in is like, I think that the Trump administration, the people that he's chosen, the people he's put in these positions, I think that most of them are actually going to get confirmed.
I do too.
And I think that they're going to be very prepared. They're going to want to move quickly. They're going to have a very clear agenda that they want to enact, like immediately. They know how to deal with the bureaucracy this time around. And so I think that actually like the most interesting thing to me is going to be, how does the media react to Trump this time around? Because if they're going to, because actually it would be in Trump's interest for them to act the way that they acted the last time, because that would distract the media from all the things that these people are doing, right? And so the media won't be able to obstruct the things that they want to accomplish because they'll be too busy, complaining about Trump's tweets and whether he's going to, go to war with Denmark or, like these kinds of things. And, which I don't know if you saw this the other day, but like, the French and the Germans came out the other day and they were like, Trump needs to knock this off. Like, he can't, to invade somebody's military borders is not like this is not acceptable. We won't just stand by. And I'm like, what are you gonna like?
What are you gonna do?
France and Germany are not the France and Germany of old.
No.
Like, what are they gonna give him a stern talking to? Right? Are they gonna they're gonna shake their finger at him?
Wait till you read their tweets.
I mean, these like they don't. These countries are not serious. Like Germany is just, it's not a serious place, right? Like they're like they're just like, oh, let's like shut down our nuclear plants and we'll just import nuclear energy from France. Okay, like it's because that like somehow makes sense, right? We'll just layers of again. We talk about
Gulf of America, and he did that. I just howled laughing.
Yes.
I'm like, I don't even care if we do it or not. The fact that we're just pissing people off is like fantastic. He got Trudeau to quit. I mean, the whole, we ought to make Canada.
He didn't just make him quit; he made him cry.
Made him cry.
Yeah,
make Canada the 51st state. We're going to buy Greenland. Send his Trump's Jr. over to Greenland for the day. I just laughed at it. I'm like, yeah, we're back. We're back. I mean, Miss America's pretty again. And she is a beautiful girl. Walker Kessler's having a nice life. Playing in the NBA, making millions, and he dates Miss America. It's good. It's kind of felt like we were back a little bit.
No, it's true. Here's the thing. I don't think that people understand the extent to which like Trump is having fun. And I'm not saying that that's an important thing for a president to do normally. But I kind of think like in this moment, that is kind of what we need. Like we need somebody who's going to be like, look, we're America.
Yeah.
Right. And just say, and if he says outrageous things, it's fine because like, we know that that's kind of like
just their swagger.
Thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
And, but I think that like, this is kind of, America needs to have, a little bit of its confidence back, right? It needs to have a little bit of like, hey, we've accomplished things that are amazing and we should celebrate them and we should be proud of them. I mean, actually, one of the things that I'm most excited for is that we're going to get the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of the United States during the Trump administration. Mm-hmm. And the reason that I'm excited for this is not because, it's entirely because Donald Trump is maybe, he's going to go so over the top with this, but that's what it should be.
Yeah.
Like that's what it should be.
Absolutely.
Like it should be an over the top celebration of like, this is us. This is what we did. We have done something that like, that is amazing. We have created this government that many people thought would fail. We have done we've done amazing things. We've become the richest country in the world. Like we deserve to be celebrated.
Yeah.
And especially after going through this very long period where we've just
apologize for it.
Where we've just been instructed to apologize for everything and to just like talk about like how terrible everything is and how terrible our history is. And this is the thing, like it must be intoxicating for people. I don't get it, but it must be intoxicating people to apologize for other people's sins. Like I've never actually understood this at all. The idea that like I need to apologize for something that somebody did like 200 years ago that I never met, that it's not even related to me. Like I need to apologize. No, like this is preposterous. It's a completely ridiculous way of going about things. And I don't know how we let it. And the reason I say it must be intoxicating is because I have no idea like how we got to that place. I have no idea how we got to the point where people just thought like, yeah, that's what we should be doing. We should just be apologizing for all of these people who came before us and did these terrible things. I don't know if these people have read world history. It's full of a lot of terrible things. The world history is a story of, conflict and warfare and lots of death and despair and poverty. And
do you know what day July 4th, 2026 is on?
I do not.
It's a Saturday, baby.
Oh, it's going to be great. Yeah. It's good at that. I
I
mean,
mean, that needs to be like, he might do it. That Friday needs to be a national holiday. We should go ahead and do the Friday before, maybe even the Monday after, and turn that thing into, so y'all thought the Super Bowl was cool. I don't even know what we would do, but that.
yeah. No, I mean, this is what, I mean,
fireworks shows on top of fireworks shows, and just,
there's a reason the slogan was "Make America Great Again," because the people there was a group, and the group has gotten larger, of people who are like, you know what? Yeah, like let's celebrate America. Like let's stop all this nonsense, and like let's actually celebrate all of the great things about this place. Instead of constantly apologizing and dwelling on historical events. No one else does this. And so, yeah, I mean, I'm all for it. Like, let's celebrate America. Let's make it insane. Let's, you're going to be so tired of winning, and you're going to say to me,
yeah,
you're going to say, please stop. This is too much winning. And I'm going to say, no, we have to win more.
All right. Last 2 minutes, your takeaways from the arrival of the guest for the Carter State funeral today. What made you laugh the hardest?
Oh, it has to be Jill Biden sitting next to Kamala Harris.
She turned her back to her in the chair.
Yeah. It was the coldest reception you've ever seen. That doesn't even do it justice, right? To say it's the coldest reception you've ever seen.
The Jill Biden, in case there was any doubt, in case there was a shred of doubt, the Jill Biden red dress on Election Day was absolutely a middle finger to Kamala. Jill Biden voted for Donald Trump.
You know my favorite,
or Jill Stein or someone, but she did not vote for Kamala Harris. No chance.
You know, my favorite thing to watch actually in these videos post-election is Doug Emhoff. That's my favorite guy to watch.
He's miserable.
Because, like, every time you see him, the look on his face is sort of like, I thought I was going to be married to the president, and like now I'm just sitting here with these assholes, right? Like that is his face every place that he goes, and he just has this really fake smile on his face, and he's just got this really awkward, tense body language.
He looks like he's a hostage.
Yes, and it is just it's just every event. It doesn't matter what the event is. Every single thing that has been televised that he has been at, that's what he looks like.
What was crazy today was all of the people who didn't really talk to Trump except Obama. Obama, who's there without Michelle. She was on vacation in Hawaii. Obama sits down. He comes in and he greets Al Gore, and he greets Mike Pence. Greets Mike Pence's wife, who, by the way, did not greet Trump at all. In case you wonder who she voted for, it was not Donald Trump. And then Obama sits down next to Trump, and they just start chatting. Kamala comes in. She has Dougie go in front of her so she doesn't interact with Trump. And then she looks back at Obama, who's yucking it up with Trump at this point. And we all know the look.
Yep.
If you've ever been in the doghouse, you know the look. That was the look on steroids. Dougie's like, it's going to be a bad night. This is not going to be a good night. I mean, if all Dougie wants to do is just go home tonight and watch the Notre Dame game, have a couple of cold ones, no chance. No. You're not turning the TV on tonight, buddy. This is fume. We're fuming tonight. We've all been there. We saw that one. And then, like, even W didn't appear to speak to Trump. Tapped Obama on the. Did you see him? Kind of tapped him on the stomach, which was odd, but whatever. W talks to Al Gore, talks to Mike Pence, doesn't talk to Trump, and Trump doesn't seem to care. He just has this conversation with Obama, where he appears to tell Obama, someone hired a lip reader, had something important to talk to him about in a quiet place, and he's made some comment about, no, we got out of that. Could you believe they something? So he was talking shop with Barack Obama, and Obama just did not appear to be uncomfortable. Which was odd since you're sitting next to Hitler.
Yeah, laughing it up with the threat to democracy. So democracy was not on Obama's ballot, apparently, because he seemed to be just perfectly fine with the the Trump jokes. It's
Biden will be at the inauguration, right?
Oh yeah, he's going to be there.
Yeah,
I mean, Jill's probably going to be there in a red dress, I would imagine.
I am now curious to see things I would have never thought that I would be curious about. What Jill Biden wears on Inauguration Day, and now I'm in. If she wears red, I will howl laughing. I mean, and I frankly have newfound respect for her.
Well,
because I mean, if you're going to troll all the way to the end, I respect that.
Well, but this thing is like the post-election interactions have just been so bizarre because, look, in 2016, they were pushing this, Trump is dangerous kind of narrative. But in 2024 and in 2020, they did the same thing. Like, oh, this guy is dangerous for democracy, whatever. But like 2024, like they dialed this up to like 11, right? Like it was just like, that was like the main campaign. Like that was the main like line of Harris's campaign is like, this guy's a threat to democracy. This guy's literally Hitler. This guy, like we can't let this guy anywhere near power. He's going to abuse his power. He's going to do all of these sorts of things. And then, post-election, he goes for his meeting with Biden, they're laughing and talking and, he goes to Carter's funeral and then he's talking to Obama and they're laughing and they're talking and, and it's just like, I mean, I always thought, I always thought that a lot of the rhetoric was over the top. But post-election, you just realize the degree to which it was over the top.
It's totally disingenuous.
Yes, because
they didn't even believe it.
No, because like when you don't like if you believe somebody is a threat to democracy, you don't sit there with them and just like laugh and joke with them while
11 days before they take power.
Yeah.
You would be scared.
I mean, look, like from all that we've seen on video, like there's no interaction between Harris and Trump, like none, right? Like, and which makes sense. I'm not judging, right? Like,
sure.
But the thing is, though, is like, so Obama could make the same choice. Mm-hmm. He could have sat somewhere else.
He could have refused to sit by him.
Yeah, he could have gone and sat somewhere else.
Of course. What were they going to say? If Barack Obama had said, "I'm not sitting next to that man. I'm sorry. I'm just not. I'm a former president. I'm coming to pay my respects to another former president, but I will not sit by that man." What were they going to do?
No.
Oh no, Barack, you will.
Yeah. No, they would have just moved.
If he'd said, "I want to sit over there next to W. I want to sit next to President Clinton. I want to sit next to Hillary." Can't imagine making that choice, but I want to sit next to Hillary. I'm not sitting here.
Yeah. And it would have been easy. I mean,
it would have been awkward.
They could have just stuck Trump next to like Laura Bush or something like that.
And she could have said no. Yeah. And had they all said no, that would have made a hell of a statement. Yeah. And it would have been awkward and all that stuff. And it would have been a distraction, I'm sure. But nobody put a gun to Barack Obama's head today and said, "Sit next to Donald Trump and yuck it up with him."
Yeah. And it just shows you it just shows you how much of this stuff was just overblown and just made up, and that they didn't even really believe it. And look, I mean, to some extent, maybe that's one reason why they lost. Is it's not just it's not just the rhetoric. It's that people didn't, and it's not just that people didn't believe the rhetoric. It's that people didn't believe that they believed their own rhetoric. Right? I mean, yeah. I think that's probably indicative of one reason why Trump won is that it's not just that people didn't believe it. They didn't even believe the people saying it believed it.
Josh, as always, thank you for the time.
No problem.
Thanks to everyone for being in the stream. We'll get this in podcast form pretty quickly. You're probably listening to this in podcast form. If you were watching, though, it's on YouTube. If you weren't watching, you can watch it on YouTube. We'll get it in podcast form. We'll be back with another edition of the Josh Hendrickson Show pretty soon. Until then, take care.